Welcome to the Actionable Futurist podcast, a show all about the near-term future with practical and actionable advice from a range of global experts to help you stay ahead of the curve. Every episode answers the question, what's the future of? With voices and opinions that need to be heard. Your host is international keynote speaker and actionable futurist Andrew Grill.
My guest today is Aaron Goldman, Chief Marketing Officer of MediaOcean, a mission-critical platform for omnichannel advertising that connects brands, agencies, media, technology and data. Aaron has been in the marketing industry for over 20 years, including CMO roles at 4C and Kenshoo, a leading enterprise marketing software company. Aaron was awarded the LinkedIn B2B Thought Leader of the Year in 2020 and is also the author of Everything I Know About Marketing I Learned from Google. When he's not busy Googling himself, Aaron is spending time with his wife and children, and today he's coming to us from Chicago. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to be with you.
Now, we're here today to talk about TikTok. So how would you describe TikTok to my mum?
Well, I would say it's an app. People use it to create and watch short videos with music.
I've always wondered what makes it so engaging. I must say I'm not on TikTok. I've watched a few. I've gone as far as Instagram, but I didn't ever get Snapchat. But why is it so engaging? And why has it broken the social media model?
Well, I'd say there's a few things. First is the format. It's full screen, sound on, music, autoplay. I mean, it kind of fires all the senses and synapses when you're in the app. And then from there, it's the algorithm. It's constantly feeding you videos. It gets to know you. It gets to know how to hook you, and you just can't look away.
And the secret to its success, the algorithm, or is there more than that?
I definitely think that's a key part of it. You know, they figured out how to keep you watching. And it's also the pop culture aspect, the way that kind of music comes into play. You know, a lot of music that sort of started on TikTok is now kind of topping the pop charts. Lil Nas X is you know, the grand example. There's other talent that beyond just musicians that are kind of getting their starts on TikTok and then turning that into careers. You have the D'Amelios who now have a reality show. There's Addison Rae who launched a cosmetics line. And so for people on the app, whether you're a creator or just a passive kind of consumer, it's where all the cool stuff is happening. And so if you want to be in the know, if you want to be cool, you have to be on TikTok. And I guess back to the point about creators, I think that's also a big thing that TikTok has done well, especially relative to some of its peers in terms of how they really view creators as partners and take care of them. Maybe part of the Chinese formula as a country, they really put a big emphasis on what KOLs is kind of the acronym, key opinion leaders. And that's sort of a cultural thing. And I think TikTok knows that creators are what draws people to the app more than anything else. It's what helps keep people engaged. And so they take care of them. They have tools for them. They just launched a creator marketplace that helps them connect with brands to find partnerships. I even just saw they launched a line of NFTs where they're taking top TikTok moments and converting them into NFTs, and the money is going to the creators. Again, I think Lil Nas X is one of them, where they're creating an NFT, and it's just, I think, part of the ecosystem and self-perpetuating that continues to drive that success.
One thing I see a lot on these platforms is that they've become really successful, and you've probably been around social media for as long as I have. I'd like to think I'm a social media pioneer. I was playing with this stuff before we called it social media. But then brands go, oh, we've got to be on TikTok, we've got to be on Instagram, we've got to be on Snapchat. It sounds like the creators are really the heroes here. Do brands have a place to play, and how can brands be cool on TikTok?
Yeah, I do think brands have a place to play. I think they have an imperative to play because that's where the attention is from the audiences and consumers that the brands want and need to reach. And so they have to figure out the play, and it could be partnering with a creator. That's, you know, a model that can be successful. But then there's also trying to create an owned or organic brand presence. And it's very different than how you would go about doing that on a Facebook or an Instagram or a Snap. And so the biggest piece of advice I always try to share with brands is to think natively to TikTok. This isn't a place to repurpose video or creative assets that you've used in other places. This isn't a place to just take the playbook and sort of, copy and paste it into this environment. You really have to think about what makes TikTok tick. Say that 10 times fast. And in so doing, then you can begin to draw people in. And right now we're still in this early experimental phase. And so there's no best practices yet. There's no tried and true way to do this. And so it's really just about getting in and testing things, trying things, see if you can create a challenge that gets people excited, see if you can create a piece of audio that might get people wanting to use it, and thinking about ways that you can break your brand down into bits that might be enticing to this audience. And that's kind of the elements of success.
One thing I'm really interested in is your views on the growth potential of TikTok. We've seen the Instagrams, the Snapchats, and to some extent the Twitters and Facebooks grow exponentially. And everyone's saying TikTok is experiencing exponential growth. But what parallels can we draw from the rise of Instagram and Snapchat and how they rose so quickly? Have they started to plateau? And when do you think TikTok might start to plateau?
Just look at the numbers, then, and I guess we could bicker about the definition of plateau, right? But, for a lot of companies, 5, 10, 15, 20% growth is fantastic. And especially when you're talking off such large numbers. But I think their rise was largely attributable to how they grabbed hold of a certain demographic. And so, it was Facebook for a long time, of course, launching with college students and then expanding from there. Instagram had its own, it started with sort of the niche around kind of the photography subculture. And then, of course, it started to skew quite young. And then when Facebook brought it, it was and kind of made it a portfolio play. It was, but people who kind of got used to Instagram at a certain stage in their life to fulfill a certain purpose sort of stay with it. Same for Snap. Snap then came in, really attracted the younger audience. At the time, it was the 13 to 17, actually a very similar audience to what TikTok is attracting now. But when people get into a habit of using Snap, for example, as the way that they communicate with friends, as the way they interface with the world and consume content, that habit is well formed at that early age and it stays with you. So as that cohort of 13 to 17 becomes 17 to 21, 21 to 26, and on up, Snap stays with them because the network is enmeshed, it's embedded. That's how you've learned to interact with your friends in the world. And so I think if we see that parallel over to TikTok, I do see that playing out. I mean, they're at 1 billion users. They just announced that, 1 billion users already. Facebook, I think, has 3 billion across its entire family of apps. I don't think there's any reason TikTok cannot continue to grow, both by bringing in new audiences, but then also just remaining so core to the current audience as that audience then continues to move through life and take TikTok with them.
Now, other platforms have tried to copy the TikTok concept. A good example is Reels on Instagram. Does a TikTok style of media best suit only the original platform that it was designed for?
I would say, generally speaking, yes. The format for TikTok works best on TikTok. Now, Reels and even in the Spotlight on Snap, there are other forums where you can create that same type of vertically shot video with some light editing, set to music, and use hashtags and other things to kind of drive community and findability. But that's where the comparisons end. The reason people come to TikTok is for TikToks. That's it right now. Of course, it's expanding in other things like commerce and others, and I'm sure we'll touch on that. But the reason people come to Instagram, if you think about when Instagram first launched to today, now there's a whole bunch of different reasons. I mean, Facebook, of course, is the best example. Facebook started as a place where Mark Zuckerberg used it to rate the attractiveness of his classmates, and over time it of course expanded. Now it's a marketplace for just about everything in the world is on Facebook. Snap also started as just the ephemeral messaging, the kind of messages that would, quote, disappear, and now has a number of different ways that you can share messages, you can find people on maps, you can discover content. In so doing, yes, each of those apps now has their section, right? There's a section of the app where you can get things that look like TikToks, and they'll have different names. But the reason people are on that platform in the first place is very different. And that's what's most important to a brand or anyone else trying to figure out how to engage is what's the mindset of the user on the platform? Why are they there? And then the creative execution becomes the next, that's almost secondary to the intent of the person on the platform. And so just copying from one to the next, yes, you can have that same, video set to the same jingle, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't meet the person where they are based on why they opened the app in the first place, it's not going to be effective.
So probably a nice segue. With so many social media players, where does TikTok fit into the media landscape?
I don't consider TikTok social media. I don't think they consider themselves social media. I consider it entertainment. I consider it just media. It has a social element, but just barely. When you open the app, the first thing you see, the default is kind of the For You feed, which is curated by TikTok. And every now and then, your friends or people you follow will come up in your For You feed, or of course you can manually kind of toggle over to the following feed and only see the people that you're connected to or have chosen to follow. But by and large, it's broadcast. It's most akin to television, I think, than any other type of media, where you turn it on and see what, and just lean back and see what's playing. And so from that sense, I think the entertainment aspect, the ability the way it sets pop culture standards, is really akin to television. Television used to be the driver of, what was hot and trending. And now you see that happening on TikTok.
So we've touched on brands before, but what should brands' strategic approach be to TikTok, and who do you think's getting it right at the moment?
There's no best practice yet. That book hasn't been written. I'm sure if I ever get around to writing my next book, Everything I Know About Marketing, I learned from TikTok. But that's going to be a few more years before we've got that figured out. And so when I hear strategic approach, I would encourage brands to forget the word strategic and just have an approach. Too many people, I think, are sort of sitting on the sidelines, waiting for their, that magic answer, that formula, seeing what others do, and then they're going to apply it themselves. And I really just think you got to get in there and test. You got to try different things, try different executions, see what works. Who's getting it right? The truth, I don't think anyone's really getting it right at this point, because there is no right. The rules are still being written. But what I can say confidently is those who are doing it, those who are engaged, they're either consuming the content just to learn, or hopefully producing content, starting to buy ads. They're going to be the ones who are going to be best positioned to develop a strategic approach, because they'll have kind of been able to play around, test and learn, and be able to apply things as they go forward.
So you mentioned the word creator, and sometimes people use it interchangeably with influencer, because there are people that are really popular on the platform. So how can you measure the impact of influencer or creator content on a platform like TikTok?
It's hard. And this is another one where there's no magic answer. And this isn't unique to TikTok. If you think of just influencer marketing in general, it's difficult to draw the line from what you paid for in terms of if you're, a brand sort of buying your way in, really there's a number of different ways to do it, but then you're trying to see the outputs from your efforts. And it's challenging. Now, TikTok did just announce a set of tools that can allow for things like direct purchase through the app. So there's, the TikTok Made Me Buy It is kind of a something that it's a phenomenon that just sort of emerged organically. Now they're codifying it and putting some actual functionality around it so that you can have products surface through, you can direct click even from a profile within TikTok. You can showcase a number of different products. So there are going to be more direct response mechanisms for brands to be able to track this stuff. I always like to just go back to a simple split test. Benchmark your sales before you started a program and then see if there was a lift during and after. It doesn't have to be rocket science. And again, I encourage people not to wait until we've sorted out the multi-touch attribution model for TikTok to get in there and start doing things.
Commerce is an interesting area and brands want to sell things. What's the social commerce opportunity for brands that are on TikTok?
It's massive. And again, up till now, it's been largely organic in terms of, things just sort of trending, going viral and selling. There's the leggings, TikTok Made Me Buy It. And now, though, TikTok is really putting some structure around it. They just held a marketing partner conference called TikTok World, and they rolled out a bunch of new features. So things like shoppable links, live stream shopping. I mentioned that they have sort of the product galleries now that you can view. And then they also announced a whole number of partners and integrations. So Shopify, Square, other commerce and payment platforms to make it super easy, both for consumers to transact through TikTok and then also for companies and brands to sell.
When does entertainment become shopping, and are the lines blurring with these new platforms?
Absolutely blurring. And again, it's not just unique to TikTok or even social for that matter. Television is becoming more shopified. With streaming now, there's new ad formats where you can start to click and buy, and I actually think Amazon is probably best positioned. It's got its commerce engine, and then of course it has Prime Video, and so you marry those things together. If you've watched Prime Video and you pause a show, you can see the data that comes from IMDb, which Amazon also owns, and you can see the actors in each scene. And it's only a matter of time before you'd be able to do the same thing and then see the products in each scene. And that really, it certainly blurs the line between entertainment and shopping. It also blurs the line between content and advertising. I mean, there's always been sort of a paid, earned, owned kind of triangle to marketing plans. But as you start to think about the same types of ways that as a brand or a retailer, you've worked with platforms like a TikTok, a Snap, a Facebook, a Pinterest has a great shopping platform kind of built in, Amazon, Google for that matter. And you organize your feed of products in a digital feed that can be ingested into these types of platforms. If you think about, so TikTok certainly will be rolling out something similar where if you have, 1,000 SKUs of products and you can just feed them in and they'll sort of automatically cycle them and show them based on its own algorithm. But then even back to the television or Amazon example, imagining having that same feed powering what you're seeing on screen and then being able to, map the shirt in a certain scene or it could be the electronics in the back and on down the line.
You make an interesting point. I only just now thought about, when you pause a video from Amazon Prime, it's called X-Ray, I think. I'm paying for Amazon Prime. I'm paying for Netflix. I don't want to be interrupted. And I haven't yet seen a traditional ad on those platforms. Now, Netflix, as we know, has said they are likely to launch an ad-funded lower-tier subscription sometime soon. However, when I play with our friends over at YouTube, I'm screaming every time I see a very unrelevant, boring pre-roll ad that I have to sit through and I can't skip to see the content about something I really care about. What's the future of advertising? Is that marrying the content you're seeing when I choose to pause the action? I want to have an interaction, or are we just going back to the old ways where you get interrupted and your feed is just full of ads?
It's going to be a mixture of both. And of course, there's this other element coming in with privacy and government regulation in terms of how data can be used and how consent can be given that is kind of steering things back towards more of a broadcast, more of the annoying way, because I can't follow you around and know everything about you and therefore show you the best bespoke ad for what I know about you. If we just take a step back, it's almost the principle of value exchange between a customer, in this case, let's call it a content provider. Netflix, yes, you pay a monthly subscription fee for the right to view a whole host of content without having to view any advertising. Amazon Prime, a little different. Technically, Amazon Prime comes free. Prime Video comes free with your Prime membership. So you're paying so that you don't have to, have delivery fees for the products that you buy, and then you also get this great content. And so your expectation, while up till now they haven't run advertising or commercials as we know them, if they begin to introduce some and they do it in a way that's maybe not too annoying, the value exchange, you're not sitting there saying, well, I'm paying, 20 pounds a month, for this, and now they're showing me ads. This is crazy. In the back of your mind, hopefully, and if they do good product marketing with the launch, they'll remind you, this is a free added value service. And by the way, you're now going to even be able to get more value because we're not going to show you ads. We're going to give you the opportunity to see what is being featured in the great scenes of whatever shows you're watching. If we shift over from those examples, though, to maybe even back to TikTok or other digital platforms, up until now, the trade-off has been the apps are free and people understand, and really just all internet content for the most part, although subscription models are taking off more with media online. For the most part, there's been a trade-off. I'm going to get free content on the internet, and in exchange, I'm going to see advertising. And that is a little different equation depending on the app, depending on the property. But if you just think about what that fair value exchange is and then do the proper amount of messaging and informing people what to expect, I do think you can bridge that gap.
I'm so glad you mentioned the word value exchange because I use that phrase all the time. And I think we've got to think about that. In fact, I'm doing a talk soon to a business leaders group in Santa Monica. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is the need for this value exchange. With things like Cambridge Analytica coming out a few years ago, now the person on the street, because they've seen it on social media, is saying, Facebook did what with my data? I don't think the average person realizes that there is a need for a value exchange. I think you're right. With the right education, the Amazon example is perfect. I absolutely understand how that model works. So yes, it is included on top of that. I get my packages for free and I've got Amazon things coming every single day. But there's a value add. You'd normally pay Netflix £12 to £15 on top of that. We're giving it to you at no extra cost. So I think that's really important. I'm interested in your views here. You're a smart marketer, so am I. We know the value of our own data, but as consumers are becoming more and more savvy, as governments are now regulating and clamping down on things with the FANGs, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, perhaps consumers will start to understand the value of their own data. My view as a futurist has been that in a few years' time, my digital agent will negotiate a different deal with Facebook than you've got. And rather than clicking and accept all terms and conditions because I give a bit of my data away, maybe you give more data away and we'll have a different relationship with Facebook. This is a broader question. It's not just TikTok. That value exchange when consumers become savvier, where do you think the needle will lie between everything or nothing?
Somewhere in the middle, between everything and nothing. I think the opportunity here for TikTok is to start afresh. I think Facebook set a very difficult standard for people to follow. Nobody really understood this, in terms of how the consumer impact would be, even with Cambridge Analytica. Yes, they've had a colossus PR crisis around this and many others since then, but I generally don't think there was no malicious intent on behalf of Facebook. They just didn't realize how the data was being used. They were growing too fast, moving too fast. Now that we've seen that, unfortunately, they've had to take a number of lumps along the way. And in so doing, they've lost a lot of consumer trust. I still get people who ask me if Facebook is listening to them through the microphone on the phone because the ads are just so darn relevant. And as the advertising professional, I'm like, well, would you rather see that or, some ad for a pharmaceutical drug that has nothing to do with you? There's sort of the messaging and PR aspect of it, and TikTok has a chance to kind of start fresh and say, hey, this is how it's going to work and this is what you can expect. Now, of course, the challenge, hanging in the background of all this with TikTok, of course, is the ByteDance, the Chinese ownership and the way that data and regulation works in that country versus the rest of the world. And there's going to likely continue to be some tension around how all that comes out to play, but they have a chance to kind of reset that value exchange. I'll share one story with you, Andrew. This was probably 10, 12 years ago. I ran an experiment, and I put a posting up on eBay for my personal data. And I said, and at the time I did it anonymously, and I said, hey, I'm willing to give you 30 days of my credit card purchases, my internet browsing, my Google search history. I'll package it all up and deliver it to you. So you don't have to follow me around on the internet and use cookies and ask me to fill out surveys or other things. I'll just hand it to you and you can show me whatever ad you want. And I guarantee you can show me a different ad every day for 30 days. And I guarantee you I will look at the ad and I will tell you if I'm interested or not. And I was, of course, trying to make a point and about how the value exchange could work. I was also trying to get a little personal brand recognition out there in the industry. So it went to auction. There were about 30 bids. I ended up selling my data for over £150. I donated it all to Susan Komen breast cancer research because I was really trying to make money off it. But the point I was trying to prove is that if everything happens on the up and up, if the consumer understands the trade-off, there is value there. There's no doubt. That's why Facebook is a $1 trillion plus valued company, because what they have is valuable information that can be monetized. The question is, who is in control of the monetizing. And I do think the equation needs to shift back towards the consumers. And I do think that's an opportunity that TikTok and others who are kind of just starting now have.
I'm Australian, so I'm going to use an Australian example. The federal government in Australia did a big inquiry into the power that Facebook and Google wield. As an appendix to that 600-page report, they had some of their interns go through and look at what it takes to sign up to a Google or Facebook platform, and the fact that you push the accept everything button and there's no room for negotiation. So I think you're right. Regulators are actually saying there needs to be a little bit more of a value exchange. And the reason that Facebook is such a valuable company is they don't give any money back to the end user. Imagine if we were able to share in that wealth. I love your story about selling your data because I keep saying I think my data is worth probably 500, 1,000, maybe 5,000 pounds or dollars a year. Because if you don't have to ask me questions and show me ads, that I think will be a very valuable proposition. But how do you scale that? I just want to throw an idea out which I'm going to test because when I mention this idea, a lot of advertisers start throwing things at me from the stage. But I think we're not that far away from having these digital agents. The mobile phone in front of you, the cell phone, knows everything about you. All your social media feeds, your bank balance, when you're traveling next, your next appointment. What about if I can have a digital agent run my life? I'll give you an example. My health insurance is due next month. So rather than me going to a bunch of price comparison websites, as you and I know, the ones at the top are the ones that are paid to be there, they don't always give the best value. But my digital agent does all the analysis and then goes and does digital deals with other places, comes back and does the analysis and says, well, if I give away my health data with this one-time hash, I'll get a 40% discount. So my digital agent does a deal, then messages me saying I've renewed your health insurance with another provider. The issue there is we don't see ads anymore because if my digital agent is doing all the deals for me, I don't need to see any ads. In fact, if you want to advertise to me, you've got to work even harder to get through my digital agent. Do you think this could possibly be the future in, say, 5 or 10 years?
What you're describing is the way that advertising technology works today. I mean, that's what Facebook is doing. Facebook is acting as that broker. They're just not consulting or cutting in the consumer in on the equation. But basically, an advertiser goes to Facebook and says, hey, I'm looking for people who are interested in this product. I'm willing to pay this much. These are likely to be the age, gender, location, other attributes. And then they're just sort of collecting across their 10 million advertisers and doing the matching. It's Facebook's agent that's doing the connecting, not the person's agent. And so flipping that on its head and putting that power into the consumers is absolutely can be done, just terribly difficult to scale, right? Because, Facebook has 3 billion people every month using its apps. And so the power of being able to do those connections is being able to match 3 billion people with 10 million advertisers. Same for Google, and others are now starting to build that scale. But you have to have both the supply and demand in one system in order for the value to come across. If I'm a consumer and I send my agent out to and the query comes back not found, that's a poor experience. I'm likely not going to do it again. But because Facebook has so many on both sides, it can find that perfect match. And unfortunately, people view that as creepy. And that goes just back to kind of how you set expectations and make the value exchange clear.
So I want to drill down into a bit more of what MediaOcean does. You're one of thousands of ad tech platforms. Whenever the new MarTech roadmap comes out, I see more and more brands and logos added to that. How would you describe ad tech and what role does MediaOcean play in this ecosystem and industry?
Ad tech is, I think, best described just by spelling it all the way out, advertising technology. And of course, that still leaves a lot to be defined, but ultimately it refers to technology that helps advertising get delivered. In MediaOcean's case, we kind of sit as sort of the core infrastructure for the advertising industry. There's more than 150 billion pounds of media that runs through MediaOcean. So that's about a third of all global advertising. And our kind of core system is helping the planning and buying and then ultimately like the billing and payments of that advertising flow through from the brand to the agency to the broadcaster or the publisher and just making that process as efficient as possible. Over the last couple of years, MediaOcean has expanded, and that's actually how I joined the company. There was an acquisition of a company called 4C in July of 2020. We just, this past year, bought Flash Talking. 4C and Flash Talking are both companies that add value on top of that that core advertising infrastructure. With 4C, we had built technology that plugged into all the walled gardens we've been talking about, or we actually call them closed ecosystems, which conjures up more lush growth environments than places that'll lock you in. But it's, we plugged into Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snap, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Amazon. And so if you're a brand or an agency and you wanted to go into one central place to build your ads, define your audiences that you want to reach, set the bidding amount for what you're willing to pay for the ads, you could do all that through 4C. Flash Talking also built a number of products. There's an ad serving product, which helps the ads deliver on the page. They have a product that helps with what we call dynamic creative personalization. So depending on what we know about the person, using, of course, privacy compliant means, we can make the ad bespoke. And so, maybe it's a red background and a 20% off promotion. And so as we've expanded as MediaOcean and now plugged these solutions in together and integrated them, what we really allow people to do is advertise at scale across all the different channels that are happening out there. So you can kind of go into MediaOcean, say, hey, I'm a business that sells these things. I'm willing to pay this much for each lead or each sale I get. And then our kind of data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning can just go to town and place everything out to the satisfaction and ultimately results that the customer is looking for.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions about the use of AI. Where does AI play in this ecosystem, and where will it play in the future? How smart will these platforms get thanks to AI?
AI plays a critical role, although there are still some things that I would say can't truly be automated and turned over to the bots just yet. There is still room for kind of good old-fashioned intuition, especially in advertising, and maybe not all the way back to the Don Draper Mad Men days, but if you think about some of those core insights, especially in today's world where so much emphasis is placed on brand values. What do you stand for? When does a brand take a stand? We live in sort of cancel culture. So if you mess up and say the wrong thing, or the bot puts your ad in the wrong place, you could be out of a job as a marketeer, or your company could be out of business. And so there is still an important role for humans to play. But back to AI, there is so much that it can do in advertising, from calculating, who's most likely to respond to your ad, which channels or placements are most likely to reach them, what's the right message that's going to engage them, what's the exact amount of money that each ad is worth to me. And those are things that used to be done manually, but no reason to keep it that way anymore. And so that's really at the core of what's operating a lot of the advertising technology infrastructure these days, and certainly at the core of MediaOcean.
So you've announced a partnership with TikTok. What more can you tell us about that?
We're really excited. What we are doing is we're building a solution for TikTok that actually does a lot of the stuff that I just described, being able to help you decide as a brand who on TikTok would be the most lucrative audience for you to reach, and actually set the parameters around who would see your ad. We can help you with the creative messaging and figuring out what elements should go into the ad, and then what you should bid. It's an auction. There's an auction system for advertisers who can bid for placement on TikTok. And so we're building out a system that's going to allow you to manage all that alongside what you're doing on Facebook, Instagram, Snap, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Amazon. So rather than having to go and log into each of those places and play with their own settings, you can do that centralized through MediaOcean using our social ad solution, which was acquired through 4C.
Big question, because I'm the futurist here. What will advertising on social networks look like in 5 years' time?
Well, I don't think it'll look like advertising at all. I really think it'll be truly immersive. We talked about some examples where kind of content and commerce blur, and rather than an interruptive ad, there's more like overlays or freeze frame type of interactions. But then I also just think the social networks are going to evolve a lot and won't look like they do today. It's going to be much more about VR, AR, or as Zuckerberg calls it, the metaverse. And so as we think about then what branding and advertising looks like in those environments, it does have to take on literally a new shape and a new form to meet that environment.
Off air, I spotted something behind you. It's a virtual water cooler, which I think's amazing. You've got a fantastic story about why you set that up.
One of the first things that I did when I had to set up a home office when our offices shut down due to COVID was, actually the very first thing I did was upgrade my internet connection. The second thing I did was go out and get a water cooler, because it was so important to try and think about ways to recreate the office experience in terms of collaboration with colleagues and thinking through ways in which we could keep sort of the energy alive, even though we're now in our own, little rooms and boxes on the screen. And the water cooler is kind of that quintessential epitome of office culture, right? We gather around the water cooler, we gossip, it's just a chance for informal, spontaneous conversation to happen. And I thought that was really important to try to recreate as we all move into this new world. And so I put the water cooler. It also, frankly, just helps me stay hydrated throughout the day. I don't have to go all the way to the kitchen to use the faucet. But what I've done is I have meetings that I schedule, so it's not completely spontaneous, but I schedule meetings with colleagues titled Water Cooler. And so the expectation is we're just going to have a chat. There's no agenda. We don't have to take notes. This is just what's going on in your life. What's the latest scuttlebutt? Did you catch that show over the weekend? What did you think about the big game? I've tried to rotate in terms of who I meet with. So it's different people from different departments, people who I would ordinarily only have seen passing, through the kitchen by the water cooler in the office. And so it's been a really nice way to stay in touch with folks. And it's kind of spread throughout the company where other people are now holding their own water cooler sessions and really just trying to keep that spark and spontaneity alive through this strange time.
It really is a smart idea. And I think all the people I speak to on pretty much all of my podcasts say the one thing they have been missing is that spontaneous, serendipitous moment. What are your plans going forward as an organisation? Will you go fully hybrid? And how will you manage when you're not in the office? Will you have those hopefully real water cooler conversations when you're all together?
We're working through all that now, and there's going to be a more flexible structure to how to return for work. And of course, it's going to be different by each country. MediaOcean is a global organization. We have 30 locations around the world. And so each country is kind of forming its own timeline based on the nature of the pandemic in that specific location. But as a company, we're really trying to set a tone where first and foremost, our employee safety is most important. So that's going to guide all of our decisions. From there, we do know it is really important for company culture, for productivity, for work output, for delivering for our customers. That happens best when we are together. But we're trying to balance both the safety aspect and the delivery aspect with also what we've all found is now the personal aspect. A lot of people like having a little more flexibility and the ability to do things in more of a hybrid way. So we are going to go back in a hybrid way. And for people who do want to, or for departments where we think it's important that people are together, there's going to be a safe way where we do that. For departments where the work can be done from anywhere, and we'll just find ways to collaborate virtually, we're going to enable that. And a lot of the way that we're thinking about it is trying to play people to their strengths and trying to turn actually this new hybrid model into a competitive advantage. And how can we find ways for certain roles, certain departments, certain situations where that hybrid becomes a new advantage. And it certainly has allowed us to rethink kind of how and where we hire people and being able to, just make sure that we've got the best talent regardless of physical location.
Final question before we do a quickfire round. You're a father. How do you educate your kids about having a healthy association with social media?
First and foremost is I don't set any strict limits or bans around anything. I just know that'll backfire. They'll just go behind my back and do it. And I'd much rather they do it in front of me where I can sort of help monitor, if not monitor, at least help them navigate safely. And so my ground rules are pretty simple. It's don't accept friend requests from people you don't know. Don't chat with anyone you don't know. If you come across a video that you know is not appropriate, then skip it. And that's pretty much it. The rest I leave to their discretion. I feel like if I show some trust, I show some empowerment, that's going to get a lot further than me trying to set strict limits. And so far it's working, at least as far as I know.
This brings me to my favorite part of the show, the quickfire round. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
PC or Mac?
Mac.
Biggest hope for 2022?
World peace and an end of pandemic.
When did you last Google yourself?
Oh, well, I'm doing it right now, Andrew. You just can't see my hands.
One thing you won't do again post-pandemic?
Home haircuts.
How would you like to be remembered?
I would love to be remembered as the Lin-Manuel Miranda of ad tech.
Well, you've got to be in the room where it happened.
He flipped the establishment on its head with his approach, and I just feel like that's what ad tech needs right now. And I hope I'm a catalyst to bring that about.
So as this is the Actionable Futurist podcast, what are 3 things our listeners can be doing today when it comes to TikTok or advertising in general?
First is just get on it if you're not already. Play around, understand it. Second would be, talk to someone who uses it. Ideally, someone in the kind of teenage demographic where it's so popular right now. And then the third would be just then test it. For your brand, for your business. Try some things. See what works, learn from it.
Aaron, I really enjoyed our chat today. You're obviously someone who is very passionate about marketing and have been doing it for a long time. I love the stories you've told. How can people find out more about you and your work?
Well, as you'd expect, I'm all over the socials. My handle is almost always at Aaron Goldman. On Instagram, I got beat out, so I'm Aaron Goldman 1. The company is at Team MediaOcean, and of course, you can always Google me.
Aaron, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a fantastic discussion.
My pleasure. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you for listening to the Actionable Futurist podcast. You can find all of our previous shows at actionablefuturist.com. And if you like what you've heard on the show, please consider subscribing via your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. You can find out more about Andrew and how he helps corporates navigate a disruptive digital world with keynote speeches and C-suite workshops delivered in person or virtually at actionablefuturist.com. Until next time, this has been the Actionable Futurist Podcast.